Eccleshill United, who of course are a Bradford club, have announced in the last couple of days, I'll bring the statement up and go through it as well, that they are planning to move away from their Kingsway Stadium and make the move to Cougar Park to ground share with the Keighley Cougars rugby team. Now, of course, chappers, one of the reasons for bringing you on is that Steeton themselves had a ground share at Cougar Park was at the 18-19 season. Before that, Silsden AFC, whilst they were renovating their Keighley Road ground, I think we're there for, 5 or 6 years, or maybe a little bit more. I mean, from your point of view, history seems to tell us anyway that ground shares at Cougar Park, and I hate to say it, football clubs in Keighley, it's a real struggle.
It is, and I worked for the Cougars for a long time as well, so I am fully aware of the troubles that Cougar Park can bring. The pitch doesn't meet the minimum requirements for the FA. I know they've just extended it because it needed to meet the minimum requirements for the RFL, but I understand it's still too short for the FA. There's still the ongoing issues with the stand. They've been looking to pull that wooden stand down and build the new stand for 3-4 years, but COVID and funding issues have prevented that. Yeah, it's a bizarre one. It's never really worked for football in Keighley at the sports ground of the town, if you will. Silsden had to go and get their own ground in the village. We've had to move on to Marley. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, especially Eccleshill are a team who has struggled to get crowds in their own village and the neighbouring village in Rose where the ground was. It's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of tap into the Keighley market. I know we've averaged about 110 at Steeton. Silsden averaged about 200, but Route 1, they were down at Marley for 3 seasons. They've struggled to get crowds in. So I don't know what the future holds for Eccleshill. I don't know what the future holds for the Keighley Cougars and how that partnership's going to work at Cougar Park. But yeah, it's a very interesting development, and one I think that's caught a lot of people off guard.
I'm not going to lie. I, frankly, am a little bit devastated because Wednesday nights is kind of Eccleshill's usual midweek fixture night, and for me, it's on my doorstep. I am part of, I guess, that community that Eccleshill United as a football club serves. For the areas around BD2, BD10, Rose, Eccleshill, Undercliff, Idle. It's a club that is actually it's in a pretty big catchment area, and it's one that I've said to you when we've been there on midweek games in the past, that if they could just promote themselves a bit more and find a way to become, the City fans' second club almost, then there's a real potential because it's a huge residential area that Kingsway is in. Obviously, they've struggled, but maybe for promotion, I guess, in terms of publicising themselves and getting themselves out there, is not something you see a great deal from Eccleshill United. They're a little bit sporadic, although, to be fair, they are improving without a doubt on social media. But it just seems a drastic step. Now, the other thing, of course, that's brought up, and I'll bring up the statement now. So this was what was put out across the Eccleshill United social media. They say that they are pleased to announce that from the start of the 25-26 season, the first team are playing its home games at Cougar Park, the home of Keighley Cougars. The move forms part of a long-term strategy for the club to ensure not only its survival, but that it also achieves the objective of being a sustainable football club while continuing to be competitive on the field and expanding its community engagement. Definitely want to come back to the words community engagement. The chairman of the club has come and said we have pursued every possible avenue to try and make the club self-sustainable, and unfortunately, despite hard work, efforts, and money, none of these avenues have come to fruition. For many years, we have struggled to generate sufficient income via gate receipts, etc., to cover the running costs of the club. The fact that we have never had a bar has also had a significant effect on the potential income generation for the club. The bar at Kingsway is owned by a separate organisation, which has nothing to do with the football club. Therefore, as you can imagine, the running costs have been significantly more than the income generated, so we have found ourselves in a position where we've had to take some serious action to ensure the survival of the club. It is important for the club's sustainability that we have a long-term vision that would allow the club to not only survive, but to progress on the field and become self-sustainable. This exciting opportunity to move to Cougar Park will help us achieve that. The facilities on offer at Cougar Park are significantly better than those at Kingsway, so this will enable all visitors to enjoy a better experience. At Cougar Park, the club will benefit from a very nice modern pitchside bar, food and drink sales, corporate hospitality, and a club shop. The stadium itself has a capacity of 7,800, so we are hoping to fill that one day. We are pleased to confirm that manager Lee Elam and his backroom staff remain committed to the club, and we continue to support Lee in the club's progression. Now, that's from the club side. We'll come to the Cougars side in a minute, but I mean, 2 words, chappers, that we know are extremely limited, and we all know, for that matter, in football: self-sustainable. Find me a club at step 9 and 10 of the non-league pyramid that's self-sustainable. It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. And I find it very bizarre that they've touched upon, we don't own the bar at Kingsway, so we get no income. So they're not going to get any income from the bar at Cougar Park either. That's owned and operated by Cougar Mania Limited, who own the rugby club.
This is a bane of contention that goes back to Steaton's time there, and again, I believe from Silton's period there. There was, again, as you say, like the club that was ground sharing wasn't necessarily getting. So unless there's something you would think an agreement, but these things are so shaky a lot of the time.
They are, and Steaton, there was an opt-out clause in that the rugby club operated. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, mate. I think you might be my end. Go on.
No, right. Yeah, no. Then that was the contention at Steaton. We only got the gate receipts, the programme sales, and the food receipts. Everything else went to Keith Cougars. With the rent agreement in place, it cost us money. And in the end, the rugby club who opted out of it at their side, and we had to obviously go find pastures new at Marley. Obviously, we felt lucky with the council. There's no guarantee if it was to happen to Eccleshill, they would also get as lucky as we did. I just think it's a move that unless Eccleshill are going to become incorporated by the Cougars, rebrand themselves, Keighley FC, Ecky Cougars, playing rainbow kits with the rugby team. I'm not sure if there's a long-term sustainable future there for Eccleshill. I do feel that unless Keighley Cougars as an entity are going to buy Eccleshill, merge them in and make them their football club, that they're just going to hide into nothing, and they've just been better off staying at Kingsway in the first place.
Well, this is the worry, surely, because as I say, Eccleshill is 8.5, 9, 10 miles down the road from Cougar Park. It's a non-league club that's been there for a long, long time and is there for its community. And whilst the attendances weren't, great, you were talking, probably 50 to 100 in most cases. Obviously, there'll be the odd game when, for example, Hallam, where there's a much better travelling support. But if you've got, 50 to 100 local residents of that area, are they really going to follow or want to make that half an hour journey to Keighley? Let's be honest, Cougar Park isn't the easiest ground to park at either on a match day. It just, I don't know. I'm a little bit. Look, I wish them all the best, but I'm a little bit skeptical and very worried. And that's from a personal point of view, I'm gutted because they were my 5-minute car journey. I can leave the house at 7, get there in plenty of time still, not have to worry. It's not
about you, Chris.
Now. Well, no, but I'm part of that community that the rest of the Eccleshill support is in.
I know.
And this is the thing. It's going from a 5-minute walk for some people or a 5-minute car drive to half an hour into Keighley, which, as I say, it's got limited parking facilities. And yes, it's a nice ground, but there's something that also feels odd about small numbers in big stadiums. You see that across the EFL and the higher echelons of non-league when you've got clubs that are in stadiums too big for them. It's just a weird feeling.
Can I ask a technical question?
Go on, Dante.
Surely there was an opportunity to go and play a ground that already has football playing at it. There's lots of clubs in Bradford. We know that, Bradford Park Avenue, Campion, Albion
Thackley, just down the road.
Thackley, so there's lots of clubs, isn't there, even playing at slightly higher levels that already have football style facilities. So I just wondered why the club haven't maybe looked into that, before taking this option. Because I mean, I worked, as Josh knows, at a rugby league club for many years, and there was always trying to get football there, and also other rugby clubs came and played at the rugby club that I worked for at Dewsbury. And what tended to happen there was rent would be paid, but as Josh says at Keighley, the same happened at the Rams. The bar revenue would go back to the Rams, and basically the only clubs that would sort of make any money would be if they did raffles on the day, halftime raffles and ticket sales, and then merchandise. So I just wondered, surely it would make more sense for Eccleshill to try and partner up with another football team, really.
Chappers, your take?
I'd agree with Steve. There are new facilities popping up all over Bradford thanks to City of Culture. The Myra Shea redevelopment is an absolutely stunning, beautiful, brand new built facility. Albion Sports and One have moved in there.
I was about to say, and actually on that, I mean, I appreciate Avenue is the opposite side of the city to Eccleshill, but because Albion Sports are moving obviously out of the Horsefall and into Myra Shea along with Route 1 Rovers, the potentially could have been some of that. Obviously, Farsley Celtic, they haven't yet confirmed, have they, exactly where they'll be playing in the NCL next season, have they?
The rumours doing the round in the local non-league scene around Keighley and Bradford, where I am especially, is Farsley are moving into the Horsefall for this season while the Citadel gets sorted out.
Fair enough. So maybe there isn't the opportunity for Eccleshill.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, as regards to the bar, I'll be honest, I wasn't aware, and I think I said this to you last night, Chappers, I wasn't aware that the social club and the bar, and actually including the toilet facilities for the public at Kingsway, wasn't part of the football club. But as I said to you, Keighley, for example, are a club that had the license on the clubhouse, which is jointly run between the cricket club and the football club, and they were able to get a license to sell alcohol on their kiosk. Excuse me. And the kiosk at Eccleshill, for me, is one of the best around in terms of value for money, service, and kind of price-wise as well. Surely an option could have been, in terms of being able to make that money from alcohol sales in particular, of just trying to get hold of a license on the kiosk at Kingsway.
I'd agree with that. Licenses are cheaper than people think they are. We pay the council, obviously, to have a license on their own facility at Marley's. That's a council facility. It's and to be honest with you, knowing how much a bar license costs just to be able to sell bottles and cans out of a container like we do at Marley, you're gonna make you get one half decent crowd in like we do at Steeton, Nelson, Baker, Darwin, Royalston. Like one decent home crowd where they're going to bring a deep few fans over with the away team. They're going to drink a bit. One home game, boom, your license is paid for, and everything else. So that's profit. So I'm not sure why, unless because the clubhouse is on the same grounds, perhaps. I don't know. I don't work for Bradford Council, so I won't be able to go into the deep bits in the paperwork, the bits you don't see. But yeah, I'm sure there'd have been an opportunity there for Eccleshill if they'd have wanted to take that.
I mean, how do you kind of see it going forward? Because in particular, of course, the pitch is a bane of contention at Cougar Park. And look, I know we're talking, 6-7 seasons ago now since Steeton were there, but how was it, for Steeton and being there in that ground share season?
Well, the start and end of the season, when the weather's dry and the rugby team are playing, it's quite good. The problem is, once you get into those winter months, October, November, December, January, not only do you have that very heavy weather, obviously the pitch at Cougar Park slopes, so it all runs to one end of the ground, but also the rugby team are back in for pre-season. And as Steve will tell you, rugby league pre-seasons isn't a case of staying off the grass to protect the pitch. They get on that pitch and they turn it into mud baths. Yeah, they turn it into mud baths. They need to get ready for their season. And they're not. I remember our last season at Steeton, we went, I think it was from late October 2019 to we played Shelley the week before lockdown. We went 4 months without a home game because of the pitch at Cougar Park, so the weather and the rugby just became a mud bath that, while it's suitable for the rugby, unplayable for football.
Well, I remember the Junior Rams played Keighley in a cup game, and I was quite excited because it means that I could sit in the box with Josh. To be honest, we could have a bit of a laugh. But that was very early on in the season. It was in a cup competition, and basically the lads came off at the end, and I was asking Josh which were our lads, and he was asking me which were the Keighley players. So it tells you everything that you need to know about how that pitch.
And Steeton had a home game. That was on the Sunday, and Steeton had the home game on the Tuesday. And I remember walking down the stand, texting Roy, saying, "Mate, I just told the referee to call your game Tuesday now."
Yeah. And very much the state of play at Keighley is very much the state of play at Halifax, because as soon as you get on the share pitch, that's exactly the same at come February, March time.
Yeah, I thought it best than to get our Halifax man Dave Foy on the show tonight, because we know his opinions of ground sharing with rugby league sides at the best of times.
He'd love this rugby league chat. He'd love it.
You don't care.
Guys, he don't care anything about anything except unless it's for Halifax.
He doesn't want to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go on to the final part of the statement that was put out, because this is, it says also the women's and the junior section of the club will carry on running as normal, and this move will not affect them. I'll be honest, I've seen some contradicting comments on social media in the last 24 hours as to whether the junior and the women's team will continue at Kingsway or not. Meanwhile, Cowie Garcia, who is the managing director of the Keighley Cougars, commented to say that we are pleased to welcome Eccleshill to Cougar Park and look forward to working closely with Sally Lee and all of the team off and on the pitch in delivering a strategically aligned plan for the benefit of the whole of Keighley. Keighley, not Eccleshill's benefit. This is just the beginning of a long-term relationship that will continue to develop and deepen over time. We look forward to seeing what the future holds for the sport in Keighley. It sounds to me, and look, I put a comment on the Eccleshill social media post to welcome anyone from Eccleshill United to come onto the show and discuss this with us, as we often did with Farsi and the debacle over there over the last period of time. But, I mean, look, Josh, am I being insane if I said that this has potentially got rebrand in the long term written all over it? Given the statements in particular from the Cougars side of things?
When I was at the Keighley Cup final 3 weeks ago at Silsden, and all the Silsden Steeton, and even your amateurs, your Oxenopes, your Silsden White Stars playing in the final, all the different committee members and players and fans of all these clubs were all together and it was literally the day after the rumours had just started about this. And we all said the same thing. Keighley Cougars are going to, and I've already touched upon it as well speaking with you tonight, I think the Cougars are going to incorporate Eccleshill. I think there will be a takeover. I think there will be a rebrand. I think the football club will become a part of the rugby club as like a different branch. You know, Cowie's Brazilian. There's a lot of that in Brazil. Football, rugby, netball, basketball all becoming the same brands. And also as well, it's something else I've touched upon while speaking to you before already tonight. The Cougars have been struggling with all their grants. You know, they've wanted that new stand for 5 years. They've wanted a new pitch. They've wanted a new floodlights. The RFL don't have access to that sort of money. The FA are currently offering out £100,000 grants to teams at this level of non-league for ground development, and they have an applicant. I know they have been going on. Is this potentially a way of the Cougars while incorporating Eccleshill? Using it for their own personal gain? Who knows?
I was going to ask, where do the how do the Cougars benefit from this? And I think, to be honest, it sounds like you may well be answering it.
I think there is a.
Sorry,
go on, Chappers. I will bring down to you.
I think it's a case of Eccleshill, because obviously words doing the rounds on social media saying they've sold the ground for housing, so they've cashed in that way to keep the club afloat for now. And I think the long-term aim of this and the end goal will be they become Keighley Cougars FC, playing out at Cougar Park with a shiny new stand, a nice pitch and floodlights. The Cougars get what they want. It allows the rugby team to flourish, and where the football team flourishes or not to be seen.
It's gutting. It is pretty gutting as somebody that has to say that lives in this area, 5 minutes away from Eccleshill, that the local non-league club is being taken out of its community. Downsy, you were going to say something? Sorry, mate.
Yeah, just 2 points. One was I wasn't laughing at Josh when he mentioned the RFL, but we've both sat in meetings for many years, and I can say we've probably a sheer fact that us four on this podcast have more money than the entire RFL put together. So it's just a sheer fact. The second thing is, and that's not a slant against the RFL. The poor sods don't get any help from anybody else either, but. The other fact is that when I worked at the Rams, there was they created a 3G, 4G pictures, and they were looking for to make inroads with grants that way and that sort of thing. It's the way rugby league clubs have to survive. So you can't really put any blame on Keighley here. You know, I personally, they've got to do what they've got to do to try and survive in the sport that genuinely has more money than a packet of Watsips, on the streets of Keighley blowing about. So I don't blame Keighley here. It's probably not the most subtle way that they've gone about doing it, but you know, at the end of the day, they're looking after their own sport and their own team. And, you know, the Cougars, I know that they've been through a few rebrands and whatever, but they are a famous, historic team in that sport. So, yeah, that's what I would say. I've seen it's not just at Keighley that it's going on. It's going on at various rugby league clubs, in the north.
Gaz?
I don't follow rugby league very much at all, but I do know that Keighley are struggling this season. Obviously, down at the bottom, they get the first win or something at the weekend.
First win of the season.
So, is this something to do? Has this come from their side? Do they need money? Is this where it's just come from?
They always need money, Gas.
Believe me, Ryan and Cowie have gotten more than enough money in their pockets to take their hit on the losses and keep Cougars afloat. My take on it as someone who has worked for the Keighley Cougars, seen all the efforts going to try improving the ground under the new ownership since 2018, and someone who's obviously been on this side of it as well with Steaton, it does feel very much to me like the Cougars are at a point now where they need to get some money from somewhere to get this stand and pitch sorted to meet the IMG regulations in rugby league. Yeah. And they've gone through the back door basically by taking Eccleshill and going through the FA. That's how I see it. I might be wrong, but that's how I see it.
Yeah.
That's how I see it as well, Josh. I don't think they've not had a choice, have they, mate? We've both worked in rugby league long enough to know how the new scoring system works and all that. And it's all a load of bollocks, I have to say. But unfortunately, you know, unlike football, where the money is decided by placings, that doesn't work in rugby league. And so the clubs genuinely have to find weird and wonderful ways of improving their own situations.
And the Cougars I think they're taking a leaf out of Hunslet's book, because obviously I know Hunslet keep the bar taking from South Leeds home games, don't they, in the NCL? So I think Cougars may have taken a lesson from there.
Yeah, well, they all talk to each other. We know that as well, Josh, don't we, in rugby league? All the chairmen love having a little meeting over mucky spread sandwiches.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we'll kind of finish on this topic, but for me, it's just sad for a community to be losing its team that is very much in the centre of, you know, it's that residential area, the fact that, you know, whilst the numbers may not be big, there's things that perhaps could have been done to avoid having to make this 10-mile move to Keighley almost. And yeah, as I say, for me, I'm just absolutely gutted about it happening. It will be interesting to see. The pre-season games for Eccleshill United are being played at Kingsway. So if you do want one last chance to get down to Kingsley before it possibly disappears in a couple of years' time, if it's sold off for housing or whatever, that is just rumours. There is nothing confirmed on that, I will admit. Then you've got the chance in pre-season. I'll be sure to be getting down there myself.